The Death Angels. A famous movie monster up there with the likes of the Xenomorph and Demogorgon, and an absolute menace in its film, and of course an active threat to the main characters. Overall, it's truly a interesting creature, having a lot of dynamic aspects about it, as well as said earlier, being quite the insane and at the same time capable predator. Anyway, I guess you could just say observing the design of this creature, and I realized though some elements of it are obviously unrealistic, such as its exoskeleton covering its body, there are some things about it that are achievable in an actual animal. Anyway, from this thought, I derived what some of you who've been around the channel longer might call a hybrid, where today we're going to be seeing if this creature could actually exist through the traits of other animals. It's sort of like speculative evolution, only basically we will be trying to construct this creature, as I said, out of existing traits from other animals that already exist. With that, I won't keep you waiting, let's get straight to it. First thing we need to do is take a slightly deeper analysis on what the Death Angel actually is, and point out a few of its key traits. Obviously, these traits are its questionable but interesting front-heavy limb anatomy, and while running we can see it mostly uses its arms as a form of locomotion, its prominent sensory details being the fact it lacks eyes, and mostly uses its hearing, clicking, and sense of smell in order to navigate and locate things. And of course there's also the fact that this is a predatory creature, though I'm pretty sure in the movie they don't actually eat the things they kill. Point is, since this is an animal, just for simplicity, we're going to say it's a predatory animal that hunts in the same way most predators would. There's also the fact that, though I wouldn't straight up say they've been seen coordinating, the Death Angels do seem to be decently social, kind of in a similar way to the way crocodiles are, where crocodiles, except for some, won't actively strategize or work with each other, but they do tolerate each other's presence and won't really go out of their way to attack each other. And yeah, for example, if there's a bunch of fish in a lake or something that creates a very prominent food source, a lot of crocodiles or alligators will gather in that area and all share the food, tolerating each other's presence. This aside, let's get to actually constructing this creature. The first animal we will be using in our mix of animals, or our genome, is the maned wolf. The maned wolf will be providing the base of this animal, so essentially, everything that we add to this animal here on out will be modifying the body of the maned wolf. We chose the maned wolf because of the fact that, obviously its limbs are incredibly lanky, something akin to the Death Angel. Especially the fact that the maned wolf, as you can obviously see, has very long finger bones or wrist bones that kind of mimic the Death Angel's type of design. The next animal we will be implementing into this creature's design will be the vampire bat. The vampire bat is one of the only terrestrial bats, or primarily terrestrial bats, that has a method of crawling and walking around over their method of flying that they actually tend to use more than their ability to fly, the vampire bat in specific, using it to gallop around and cling on to animals to lap blood off of. Point is, the vampire bat shares a very similar front-heavy design with smaller, lankier hind limbs, and to come with it, a running method that works perfectly for this type of build. And this running method also happens to be incredibly similar to the Death Angel, where it essentially pole vaults its body forward, lands with its legs, and then uses its legs to stabilize its body, while its arms shoot forward again, grabbing the soil and then throwing its body forward, almost like repeatedly pole vaulting, as you can see in this video here of a vampire bat running. Other things we will be taking from the vampire bat that resemble the death angel are the reliance on other senses aside from seeing, even though their eyesight is still pretty good. We will especially be taking the tongue and vocals of the vampire bat that will allow this creature to utilize echolocation, and we will be taking the vampire bat's larger ears that allow it to receive the signals from this echolocation. Now, the next thing we will be adding to our Death Angel is the gorilla. Now, one thing that comes with an animal using this method of locomotion on a larger scale, because vampire bats utilize this form of locomotion perfectly, but one of the reasons they're so good at it is because of how light their body is. Because of the fact that this Death Angel is going to be much larger than a vampire bat, it's going to need some things to compensate for the larger amount of size we're moving around. And this is where the gorilla comes in. The gorilla provides an assortment of traits such as larger shoulder bones and the scapulas and shoulder attachments that we need, as well as a large, strong collarbone, which isn't actually present in the main wolf, and a barrel-shaped rib cage. The gorilla will also be adding all of its chest muscle and arm muscle, as well as the tendency to rely less on its hind limbs for locomotion. Gorillas sport a locomotion method similar but not quite there to the vampire bat, where they do utilize their front arms more in movement, but in a different locomotion method. Point is, they have all the adaptations we need for this method of movement to be effective. And with that aside, though our animal will sport similar anatomy to a gorilla, its arms will move entirely different, as stated previously when describing the vampire bat's method of movement. The gorilla will also be providing a slightly more Death Angel-shaped head, or at least a head shape more akin to the Death Angel. The gorilla will also be providing the instinct to use its arms as a weapon or method of fighting, or hunting, or really anything of the sort, as with those large arms being as strong as they are for moving our creature around, they are going to be viable weapons in combat. The next thing we will be adding to our Death Angel is another crucial part of its anatomy. That being the Clydesdale horse. The Clydesdale horse will be increasing this creature's overall size and doing something that turns this creature from a large bat to an absolute killing machine. So, one of the main gimmicks of the Death Angel, as mentioned previously, are its abnormally long wrists, which our creature gets from the maned wolf. Only thing is, the Death Angel also loves punching and slapping stuff. But with such long finger bones, as you've seen, your fingers are mostly made up of bones that are all relatively thin. And those aren't going to hold up to punching and slapping, let alone barely even hold up to movement, as these things will essentially have to be straight up columns in order to support this thing's whole body weight while just on their own while this thing moves. So, this is where the horse comes in. One thing about horses that you might notice is the fact they don't have claws or hands, they have hooves. This is because their finger bones have all essentially merged together into one solid column. This makes it so that this single, wrist essentially acts, as I said, a column that allows them to run and exert insane amounts of force on their hands, and they're just fine. There's no finger bone breaking, there's no fractures, nothing of the sort, because of the fact those bones are merged together into one larger bone that again can absorb more weight. The only thing is, we still want our Death Angel to be able to roughly grab stuff and use its individual fingers to shift its weight around on, stabilize itself, and use its claws as a viable form of attack. So, here's what we'll be doing. If you notice, in a wolf's limb anatomy, you can see that the back finger bones, or the metacarpals, make up a sort of column-like structure, And then you can see the rest of their finger bones in relation to those are all relatively smaller and sit way down at the bottom of the hand, forming a small hand-like structure. What we will be doing is we will be using horse DNA to merge specifically the metacarpals all into one solid column. This will mean that though our Death Angel will still have its individual fingers, it might be a bit less dexterous, although having this solid column-like arm will allow it to move a lot more effectively. It'll allow it to punch with more force, it'll allow it to slap with more force, and as I said, that pole vaulting method of locomotion we talked about earlier will allow this thing to zoom around at speeds it probably couldn't achieve before without risk of injuring itself. Now, just a few additional things to add to these arms. The lion, just generic lion, nothing too special about it, will be providing retractable claws that allow our hybrid to walk evenly on paw-like structures, but it can pull out its claws whenever it's in combat, the benefits of this being that it can run without scratching its claws, keeping them sharp for, again, combat. But also, the lion will be providing hair in some locations, specifically whiskers on the face that will allow this thing to, pick up on things it can't see near its head, as well as something most of you guys who probably own cats don't even know they have. All cats, at least I think all of them, have a set of longer hairs that come out of their wrists. These sensory hairs kind of act like whiskers in the sense that whenever they have something in their paws, that the thing they're holding will usually brush up against these whiskers, and it helps give these cats a better idea of the position of the item they're holding, and allows them to adjust accordingly. Now, of course, this is just kind of like a little side thing, since they can already obviously feel the thing they're holding and see it, but our creature can't see anything. So, whenever it's grabbing something, or like throwing something around, those additional hairs on the back of its wrist will allow it to have a better idea of the position of the thing it's holding, and really just everything this creature is doing, and be really effective as a terms of sensory and, detail, having detail of its surroundings. The lion will also obviously be providing its sharper claws. Next important contributor will be the American bison. The American bison will be providing its large back ridge that supports a lot of its back muscle. Now, on our Death Angel, this ridge won't be nearly as prominent, but it will still be present, as our creature will need a lot of back and chest muscle for its form of locomotion, and yeah, it gets this from the bison, and that's really all we'll be taking there. Now, for a quick lightning round, the cockatoo will be providing its frill, as, of course, the Death Angel's got that weird, thing on its face that's kind of difficult to replicate with a real animal, although the cockatoo has something similar, and though this won't assist in hearing like it does on a Death Angel, it will assist as an intimidation display, and since our creature doesn't have eyes, might as well just slap 2 more on there since it doesn't really need eye muscles. Speaking of the fact it has no eyes, the Sicilian will be next in the genome, which, despite the fact the Sicilian is an amphibian, so it's kind of distant in relation to our animal, we will be taking it for something kind of simple, just being the fact that its vestigial eyes will be located under the skin. This will take away our Death Angel's ability to see completely. The crocodile monitor will also be providing sharper teeth, as well as the bulldog bat, which will be providing a more powerful form of echolocation, as they have some of the most powerful vocals out of any bat. The honey badger will be providing its thick, loose skin that acts as a durable, lightweight armor that will allow our Death Angel to still be nimble and to run around effectively, but again, it won't really be impeding the creature's ability to move. We will also be taking the honey badger's obvious aggression and fearlessness. We'll also be taking the bloodhound. The bloodhound will be providing its sense of smell, as bloodhounds can track scents up to a week old and still be able to tell almost exactly what they were smelling, what it was doing, the positioning of it, and follow paths, which will be effective for a creature that can't see anything. And the last creature we will be adding is the Komodo dragon. The Komodo dragon, also being a species of monitor lizard like the crocodile monitor, will be providing a few traits like its iron-coated teeth, specifically having a small, almost untraceable, little slit of iron on its teeth that protects the sharpness of it and allows them to be used multiple times. Although the main thing we're taking the Komodo dragon for is its social structure. Now, one thing about Death Angels, as I said previously, is the fact they're not exactly social creatures, being independent hunters that really just kind of tolerate each other's presence. And Komodo dragons are very similar in that sense. As I said, we will be taking its social structure, as Komodo dragons are solitary hunters, although they will tolerate each other's presence, maybe occasionally attacking each other. Also, in A Quiet Place, it's seen as there is a larger, almost alpha variant of the Death Angel that almost sort of has the respect of the other Death Angels. And again, Komodo dragons are similar in this sense, as the only time they'll really fight is competing for a mate or competing for an almost lead role. But if there is one Komodo dragon that stands out being larger than the others will refrain from fighting each other, as they know they don't really have a chance while that big one's around. So yeah, overall the social structure is almost exactly the same as it is with the Death Angels, which is why we'll be taking it for that. With that, everything aside, let's get to the grand reveal. This is the result of our Death Angel hybrid, a creature that stands at roughly 15 feet tall at the shoulder, weighs roughly a ton or 2,000 pounds, and can run at up to 20 miles an hour. Though this creature obviously looks similar to the Death Angel, it has a few key differences. Although let's cover all of this thing's key traits. The first thing is its method of locomotion. As stated previously, it uses its refined arms, collarbones, and shoulders, and additional chest and back muscles to essentially pole vault as a method of locomotion, allowing this creature to be highly maneuverable, even potentially swing and vault over stuff, as said previously. These large arms aren't for show either, as they are used as a viable weapon, being able to swing with up to 8,000 to 10,000 newtons of force. For reference, that is roughly the same amount of force as getting hit by a car, and exceeds the amount of force that you would get from getting punched by a gorilla, making this on par with a kick from a draft horse. So in other words, this thing can throw a real punch. Not only that, but its echolocation and sense from the bloodhound allow it to basically have a rough idea of what its surroundings look like from up to a mile to 2 miles away, being able to track scent trails and have a rough idea of everything in the area, identify threats, spot food, and do almost everything it needs to with immense precision and accuracy. Now for the one thing arguably setting our animal even above the likes of the Death Angel. That being its echolocation. Now, one thing about bats that you may have heard before is how loud they actually are. Only problem is, their echolocation is at such a high frequency that it can't really be perceived by human ears, and they usually have to use a special microphone to pick up on it. One thing that comes with our supersized bat being as large as a horse is the fact that larger vocals means a deeper sound. This deeper sound essentially acting as a sonic weapon. Hear me out. With the vampire and bulldog bat's ability to create large amounts of sound, and being able to direct this sound, and coming from a much larger creature with a frequency that now can be picked up by the ears of other animals, it results in a sonic attack that can disorient, temporarily, and at close range permanently deafen other animals, since, as I said, the frequency can now vibrate the eardrums of other animals while still mostly passing through them, so it still acts as a great method of navigation. It essentially has the ability to rupture eardrums, so yeah. In other words, if this thing were to get into a fight that it happened to be losing, it could use its echolocation as a weapon, basically deafening whatever it's coming across. And it being conscious of the fact it has this weapon, bats also possess the ability to actually close off their ears, which means that our vampire bat could really just put on a set of biomechanical earmuffs that would allow it to use its sonic attack and not face any of the side effects, making it so this thing has a form of auxiliary weaponry that no other creature has, which, in my opinion, arguably sets it above something like the movie Death Angel, while still keeping it close to the real thing. With all of that aside, that's our Death Angel, and I hope you enjoyed the process of creating this, and if you did, I have a few more videos similar to this one. Specifically, the ones I recommend you check out are my few on Subnautica, with my most recent one being on Subnautica 2. With that, if you enjoyed your time here, like, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you later.